Hi, my name is Daniel Lemberger. I recently finished writing a book called LifePower. I don't want to talk to you about LifePower today. I'd rather talk about another book written by another guy. And the person I'm talking about is Frank Sarge Gerbode. I have never met him. This is the cover of his book. It's called Beyond Psychology and written by Frank. People call him Sarge Gerbode. He's a professor of psychiatry, and his book is interesting for me, for people who are interested in what I'm doing, which is the philosophy of Ron Hubbard. I've never met Sarge Gerbode, and I admit I have not even read his book, but I have spoken to people who know him, who read the book, and who work with Sarge Gerbode. The technique he developed is called TIR, Traumatic Incident Reduction, and he founded an organization that delivers, promotes, teaches this field, Traumatic Incident Reduction, and the organization is called TIRA, Traumatic Incident Reduction Association. Why am I talking to you about Sarge Gerbode and TIRA? Well, what I do is practice and promote and deliver the philosophy of Ron Hubbard, which started with Hubbard's book Dianetics in 1950, evolved into a subject called Scientology, which became an organization called the Church of Scientology, which was taken over, corrupted, destroyed, maybe by an individual called David Miscavige, maybe by others, I don't know. I and my group and my friends, we left the Church of Scientology in 2012, but we continue to practice Hubbard's philosophy. I don't want to call it Scientology anymore. So we call it Hubbard's philosophy, and we do it very successfully in Israel and now with LifePower worldwide. And after I finished writing the book, friends of mine from the US mentioned to me that they did the TIRA course, the Traumatic Incident Reduction course, developed by Frank Gerbode, and this was very interesting for me. And then somebody gave me a copy of the book. I then ordered a copy for myself, and when I opened the contents, the introduction of the book and the table of contents, I said, wow, Gerbode, who wrote the book 30 years ago, read my mind 30 years in advance, and he knew what I was going to write, and he copied my thoughts. So very well done, 30 years in advance copying my thoughts. That's amazing, because the book I wrote before I even heard of Gerbode's book is in some ways similar to his book. So Sarge Gerbode, his training was first as a psychologist and psychiatrist. He's a doctor. He studied, I think, in England and then in California. And after many years of studying and then working in the field, he writes in the foreword to the book, there's a section, foreword, and he writes about himself and what he did. And he says, then came a 13-year interlude about which I have mixed feelings. These years were spent intensively studying and practicing the techniques of Dianetics and Scientology. And he says, but these 13 years, for all their negative aspects, proved to be a valuable learning experience. Eventually, it became necessary for me to make a clear distinction in my own mind between the organization of the Church of Scientology and the theories and techniques themselves, many of which are quite humanitarian and have very positive effects. So Gerbode encountered the same dilemma or parting of the way as I have found and my friends, and we knew that the philosophy works, and Hubbard was a great man who contributed immensely to mankind, and this as opposed to the organization. And I've said, I'm not ashamed to say, that I think Hubbard may have made some mistakes in the organization, but certainly the organization taken over by Miscavige or some other group of individuals has become destructive. It's not a church, it's not Scientology, it's more like a mob. Okay, so he says, Gerbode, once I made this distinction, I made a point in early 1984 of severing all connections to the Scientology organization. So well done, Sarge, you did it in 84. It took me, 28 more years, and I left the Scientology organization in 2012 together with my friends, my partners, and we're very happy for doing so. But let's see what he says here. Despite our parting of the ways, and despite the advice of some of my friends, I feel it would be wrong not to acknowledge the wealth of information I found in the Scientology material. So I can also laud and a lot of respect, admiration to Sarge Gerbode for talking about Scientology and Hubbard in the foreword to his book, and maybe it would in some ways damage him, or people would be distracted or disapprove of this, but he still mentions this very clearly. He says, there was 1 year in which Scientology and psychiatry overlapped. During the day, I practiced conventional psychotherapy, and in the evenings, I functioned as a Scientology practitioner, i.e. auditor. So he trained 13 years, he says, as a Scientology auditor, and 1 year he worked during the day as a psychotherapy psychiatrist, and in the evenings as an auditor. I found my work in the evening to be much more effective than the work I did during the day. Wow. The fact forced me to take the Scientology materials seriously. So Sarge Gerbode, doctor of psychiatry, says Scientology auditing is much more effective than conventional psychotherapy. The wealth of practical and theoretical data accumulated through the actions and interactions of this group is extraordinary. He talks about the group of people working with LRH and developing the technology. I spent many years studying it, however, and I feel I've learned the most important parts. He then goes on to mention a few names of people who've helped him, and he thanks them, and I want to thank them too, especially David Mayo. And final sentence I will quote from Gerbode's foreword is, many of the ideas presented in this book, Gerbode's book called Beyond Psychology, are inspired by this wealth of Scientology material. This, of course, for me is a sign of, the benefit and the value of Hubbard's work and what we do. And when people occasionally ask me, well, are you a doctor of psychology? What are you guys? Well, here's the answer. Professor Dr. Sarge Gerbode, he gives all credit to Ron Hubbard and to his philosophy and to the practice of auditing. Gerbode left the Scientology organization, as he says, in 1984. He teamed up with David Mayo. David Mayo was Senior CS International. He was Ron Hubbard's right-hand man, his personal assistant, and Senior CS International means the top man for technology in the Scientology organization. For many years, he was Hubbard's personal auditor. Very valuable man, very senior man. And we don't know what happened, but around the years 1982, 83, somebody, Miscavige, I think, took over and managed to cut Hubbard's lines with the organization and systematically set out to grab power and destroy Scientology, and he quickly helped Miscavige got rid of brilliant individuals such as David Mayo, Frank Gerbaud, Bill Robertson, and many others. When Gerbaudi and David Mayo left the Scientology organization, they set up a new Scientology center. They called it AAC, Advanced Ability Center, in Santa Barbara, California. They started this activity. They tried to make it work, go international, and of course they were immediately attacked severely by the Church of Scientology in ways legal and illegal. Legally, they were sued. The Church of Scientology sued the Advanced Ability Center for copyright infringements, for all kinds of things they did, taking the Scientology materials with them. In addition, the church sent activists to harass the people of the AAC, to set the place on fire, yes, to set on fire, to make noise, to disturb the people, to disturb the activity. I met a few months ago a guy, he regrets what he did, but he was then working for the Office of Special Affairs of the Church of Scientology. He says they sent us out to set the place on fire, destroy the signs, disturb in any way we can. Within 2-3 years, the church succeeded, and they brought the AAC down to its knees. They forced David Mayo to shut down the activity. I don't know too much about it. David Mayo later left the US. He lived in New Zealand. He died a few months ago. It's very regrettable that David Mayo left without writing a book or recording himself like I'm doing now and telling us his story, his extraordinary, close, intimate relationship with Ron Hubbard, and what happened, what forced him to shut down. When they shut down the AAC, Frank Gerbaudi wrote a letter in July 1986 to all the friends, all the people who were active in the AAC. I have a copy of the letter. Here it is. You can see the letterhead, Frank Gerbaudi, and July 1986. When they shut down AAC, Gerbaudi told the church people, okay, I'm no longer involved with that, but my profession is psychiatrist, psychologist, practitioner. I've studied Hubbard's philosophy for many years. I want to continue practicing my profession, and I plan to write a book. The condition of the church for him writing the book is that they will go over it, they will check it out, side check it, and they will approve it for publication after they verify that he's not in any way infringing on their copyrights, violating the law, what they consider the law, and what is theirs, and that the book does not interfere with Scientology activities and materials. And Gerbaudi apparently agreed to it, because when I met about half a year ago my friend Mike Rinder, and I told him about the traumatic incident reduction and that I met some friends who practice it, he said, wow, I personally know Frank Gerbaudi. And I was surprised that Mike Rinder would know Frank Gerbaudi personally. And I said, well, how comes? How do you know him? And he said, well, when they left, David Mayo and Gerbaudi, when they left in '86 and he wrote a book, every chapter that Gerbaudi wrote of the book, he sent us. Mike Rinder at the time was Miscavige's right-hand man. He was later commanding officer of OSA International. He was a very senior official at the church. He was born to a Scientology family in Australia. He was in a very senior position until, I think, 2008, when he left, and now, as you know, is a very vocal, tough critic of Miscavige and the church, exposing Miscavige's crimes. So thank you very much, Mike, for what you're doing. I have disagreements with Mike because he has also become anti-Hubbard, anti the philosophy of Hubbard, and I'm still a friend of Hubbard and a strong proponent of the philosophy. But Mike Rinder tells me, when we met, that every time Gerbaudy in 1986 wrote a chapter of the book, he would send it to him, to Mike, and then they would meet, the three of them, David Miscavige, Mike Rinder, and Frank Gerbaudy would sit, review the chapter that Gerbaudy just sent it, make corrections, make comments to it. Gerbaudy would fix it, send it back, get their approval, and finally, only after having the approval of Miscavige and Mike Rinder, Gerbaudy published the book. In it, he develops a technique called traumatic incident reduction, and then the association, and now it's a worldwide organization. I don't know if it's big or not. I haven't gone into it. It doesn't matter for me. But there are representatives all over the world, even somebody in Israel, some people in Switzerland, in Germany, in Europe, some people in the US. My friends practice it successfully, and some Scientology auditors practice it, and then through the Tira connections, they have people coming to them for Tira therapy, and then some of these people continue with auditing and on the bridge. So it's a way to get people to come in. Fine, I have no objections to that. Now, what is the difference between Tira and Gerbaudy's work, Beyond Psychology, and my book, LifePower? Well, my book, LifePower, the LifePower Network, is a way of getting people interested in Hubbard's philosophy, getting to know the basics of the philosophy, and then practicing it in what we call auditing, several types, basic techniques of auditing, and then if you like it and you're interested, you can continue going up the bridge. Gerbaudy's book and his therapy, TIR, alleviates, or he calls it traumatic incident reduction, reduces, alleviates traumas that a person suffers from. What he doesn't tell his audience, the readers, the people that come for therapy, is that they are a spirit. Any therapy that tells you that you're a meat body is misleading you. Man is a spirit, and you have to address the spirit so as to improve man's condition. Because what you suffer from is not what happened to you this lifetime. I'm 66 years old, you the listener maybe are 20 years old or 80 years old. In this lifetime you may have suffered from some traumas, some accidents, some tragedies, you've lost some loved people, you've had some rough times for sure, but these things are, I think, in most cases, light and minor to the very heavy traumas that we've all suffered on our, what we call the whole track, like the many, many years of existence of the spirit, going back thousands of years. So over the many lifetimes, earlier lifetimes, most of us have suffered heavier traumas than in this lifetime. So if you don't tell man that he's a spirit, if you don't tell him he's lived before, if you don't have a technique that reduces, erases the traumas from past lives, you're doing nothing for man. And if you don't tell a person he can achieve the state of clear, because there's no doubt, I know for sure, I can prove it, that the state of clear does in fact exist. It's a scientific fact. We've had in LifePower, in our group that I run in Haifa, Israel, called Draw Center, we've made tens, hundreds of clears. We know that the state of clear is an absolute, is definite, is clear cut. It can be achieved by any person, but you have to recognize that man is a spirit, and you have to help him rid himself of the charge, of the traumas, of the millions of years back. So this is what we do in LifePower. This is how we differ from Tira or from psychotherapy or from all the other ologies and isms, therapists and people who can help you. Yes, they can help you because talking to somebody about yourself makes you feel good. Meditation is nice and talking to somebody is good, and there are many techniques. But to achieve a much improved state of beingness, that of clear, where you really are rid of your subconscious, you no longer are haunted by your traumas. To achieve that, you have to recognize man is a spirit and you handle the whole track. This is what we do. And please contact us at LifePower. You can order the book I wrote. LifePower is the name of the book. You can, of course, also read Gerbodi's book. You can compare the books and tell me more about it. You can send us an email. I'm always happy to hear from people. And thank you very much for watching this video. Bye.